right, let's have fun, y'all.
I want to hear yipping from the house.
Well, blue moon of Kentucky, won't you keep on shining? Yeah. Shine on the one who's gone and left me blue. Well, blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one who's gone and proved untrue. Yeah. Well, it was on a moonlit night. The stars were shining bright. They whispered up on high, you love that said goodbye. Oh, blue moon of Kentucky, won't you keep on shining? Keep on shining.
Shine on
The one who's gone and proved untrue. Yeah. Take it to the B section. Well, it was on a moonlit night. The stars were shining bright. They whispered up on her, you love that said goodbye. Yeah, blue moon of Kentucky,
want to keep on
won't you
shining.
keep on shining
I say keep
all night long?
Keep on shining.
Yeah, blue moon,
Kentucky want to keep on
keep on shining. Shine on the one who's gone and proved untrue. Let me have it. Well, it was on a moonlit night, and the stars were shining bright. They whispered up on her, you love that said goodbye. Oh, blue moon of Kentucky, won't you keep on shining? Shine on the one who's gone and proved untrue. Yeah, shine on the one who's gone and proved untrue. Stanky face, there it is. Get it.
Good evening. My name is Amber Duke. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm Deputy Director for the ACLU of Kentucky. Thank you for joining us this evening for our 2021 annual meeting. Of course, the COVID pandemic is keeping us from being physically together, but I hope that you can enjoy this virtual space. Zoom fatigue is real. Screen fatigue is real at this point in the pandemic, so we really appreciate you joining us this evening. I hope that you'll make the most of this virtual space. We will be utilizing the chat function, so I encourage you to say hello to each other, to build community there, and to comment on the performances that we have coming up. We're also going to have an organizational update from our Executive Director, Michael Aldridge. The first link that you're going to see pop up in the chat is a link to the legislative portion of our website. We've just wrapped up a very hectic legislative session where a number of our priority issues made it over the finish line. And of course, there are some issues that we will have to take up during the next General Assembly. I do want to take time to commend our staff, particularly our advocacy team, our comms team, and our legal program for their work during this session. Our team continues to work healthy at home, so we're all excited for our chance to roll up our sleeve to get the COVID-19 vaccine so that we can return to working in our office. Until then, we're protecting civil rights and civil liberties from our homes. During the legislative session, that meant that our folks were testifying in committee via Zoom. We had some ACLU of Kentucky pets that made some appearances in some of those committee hearings. We also had our members and supporters, you guys, really leaning in, keeping the pressure on members of the General Assembly, even though you couldn't physically be in the Capitol. And we're so grateful for your work. We had dozens of supporters who participated in many virtual lobby days to connect with their legislators, and we really appreciate you all taking the time to do that. Now I would like to introduce a very special guest. As a child, her neighborhood was targeted by the KKK. As a teenager, she was threatened as she tried to organize interracial study groups. As an adult, she was harassed by the police and jailed for her political activity. She's an author, an educator, and the very definition of a change agent. It's my honor to introduce Angela Davis in conversation with our Keturah Herron, ACLU of Kentucky policy strategist.
First off, just thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm Keturah Herron with the ACLU of Kentucky, and I'm a policy strategist here located in Louisville, Kentucky. And so thank you so much for your time. And so I want to get right into everything. In the last few weeks, as I've been doing some research, learning more about you, one of the things that I learned was that you spent some time in Louisville, Kentucky, and you spent some time with Ann and Carl Braden, and at the work that they were doing.
Okay, well, first I think it would be important for me to share with you my introduction to the Bradens. I was very young then. I think I was probably about 15 years old when I was living with a family in New York, attending my last 2 years of high school there. It was the family of William Howard Mellish, a minister who had been ousted from his church because of charges having to do with anti-communism. He had actually worked with the Council for American-Soviet Relations and was friends with W.E.B. Du Bois and Paul Robeson and others. He was also really close friends with Ann and Carl Braden. And after he was ousted from his church, he joined the staff of the Southern Conference Educational Fund, where Ann and Carl were field secretaries. And I think it's important that people know that SCEF was a really important source of support for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the more radical wing of what we know as the civil rights movement. And so my first introduction to them was reading Ann's book, The Wall Between. And I also heard a great deal about Reverend Mellish when he would make trips to the South to do work for SCEF. And one of the most vivid memories of those years is a visit from Carl Braden when he was about to turn himself in after having been sentenced to prison for refusing to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. That was my introduction. And we don't have enough time to talk about the entire story, but I will say that after I was arrested, they were very much involved in the campaign for my freedom. And both Carl and Ann were involved in the organization we created after my trial was over, the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression. Carl was an officer of the organization, and then later Ann was. Carl died in 1975, but I continued to learn from Ann. We worked together for many, many years. And perhaps I can just point out that shortly after my release, I was invited to speak in Louisville. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to speak at Central High School. But there were protests by the Ku Klux Klan and others, and I guess the city withdrew the agreement to hold the meeting at Central High School. But Reverend Schroederlook, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who was a white minister in Louisville, offered his church, and the rally took place. I should tell you that I've been given the keys to the city of Louisville. I was given the key and it was taken away, and I was given another key. So yeah, I have a long history in Louisville, but most recently in about 2002, I accepted an offer to teach for a semester at the University of Louisville in the Department of Women and Gender Studies, largely because I knew that I would be able to spend time with Ann. And during that time, I got to know Carla Wallace, who's a very close friend and comrade. So I feel as if I have major ties to Louisville.
I guess the question I want to ask you is, how do you see the work from the previous administration impacting the work that Biden and Harris will have to do, and what should we expect to see from our current administration?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think we can wait and see. I guess that would be my response. I don't think that we can assume that if we simply sit back, that this current administration will move in the right direction. I think it's clear that the only reason the previous occupant of the White House is no longer there is because people organized. They got out the vote. They engaged in really phenomenal work. And that work has to continue. And let me just say parenthetically, I think the mistake we made during the Obama administration was to sit back after he was elected. And not nearly as much was accomplished during that time as could have been accomplished had we had mass organizing and mobilizations and pressure on his administration. We have to do this for the Biden, with respect to the Biden-Harris administration.
I do want to ask you, I know that one of the first things that we saw from the Biden-Harris administration was that they did an executive order. They did an executive order to end private prisons with DOJ. And so hearing that on the surface, it sounds like, oh, that is a great thing. But like, what does that really mean? Like, what does it really mean to that they have put this executive order out there? And yeah, just what does that mean, and what does that mean to the work as far as abolition?
Well, I think it's important that he did it. Perhaps more symbolically than anything else. Private prisons only incarcerate about 10% of the federal prison population, not very much. And what really disturbed me about that order, and we have to be really careful in our analysis so we don't get caught up in the kind of enthusiasm that can dull our ability to understand what is really going on. His order exempted ICE. It exempted Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And if one looks at the prison privatization issue, it is clear that immigrant detention is the most profitable dimension of private prisons. And so if anything substantive is going to happen, then certainly ICE, well, first of all, ICE should be abolished, but certainly the privatization of immigrant detention needs to be abolished. I think it's important to point out that we're not opposed to private prisons in order to have better government-run prisons. The whole point is to abolish imprisonment as the dominant mode of punishment, and to recognize that an important element of that struggle has to do with contesting the role of capitalism. And so privatization helps us to understand how mass incarceration emanates from global capitalism, but simply getting rid of privatization is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah. So would you? So based on like the things that you're saying, it sounds like to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need to continue to put pressure on to make sure that our immigrant brothers and sisters are let out of cages, and to definitely hit on the ICE piece and work on really abolishing that structure and system.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's remember that Obama had already ended the contractual relationship with private prisons. It was the last occupant who reinstated it, and actually made it possible for private prison companies like Core Civic to see their stock rise in value. So we're kind of where we were at the beginning, which isn't really saying much. And I think that as radical activists, we should acquire the habit of not becoming self-satisfied when something positive happens, but rather using it as the terrain for a continuing to move forward in radical directions. And I think that is what we really need to be doing now.
Yes, I love that. I want to now shift the conversation a little bit and talk about some of the things that we saw this summer in the murder of Breonna Taylor that happened here in Louisville. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Jacob Blake, and other people. We saw protests all around in all 50 states, I think in 17 or 18 different countries. I know here in Kentucky, we saw protests in communities that we had no idea that there were people there standing in solidarity with Black folks. And so we saw young people fill in the streets. We saw elderly people fill in the streets. It was just this large movement that I think that for many of us, it's the first time that we've seen something so huge and so impactful in our lifetime that we were able to witness. And so you have protesters, you have elected officials, you have folks who do policy, just a wide variety of people. And so there are many strategies and tactics to win. And so I guess my question is how do we bring people together to work on a collaborative agenda for Black liberation and for racial justice?
Oh, well, I've been around for a while. I've participated in many, many movements. I've seen many demonstrations, but I've never seen anything like what we experienced last summer. And I don't think that there's ever been a period in the history of this country where so many people have simultaneously joined in the call for an end to racism in this country. Of course, social media has a lot to do with the fact that it's possible to mobilize people. Sometimes it seems almost spontaneously, but I think the key factor was the ongoing organizing that has been happening, particularly since the death of Trayvon Martin. You mentioned a book that I wrote in the aftermath of the Ferguson protests. Freedom is a constant struggle, and the subtitle is Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations for a Movement, because I wasn't yet certain that we could declare that we had a powerful movement against racism all over the country, but it was clear that the foundational work had been done. It was clear that the organizing work was ongoing. And so when George Floyd was murdered, when Breonna Taylor was murdered, and so many others, people who had been hearing these messages from anti-racist organizers all along, but who perhaps had not responded, realized, almost in a kind of collective epiphany, that something has to be done. This had to do, of course, with the fact that finally, large numbers of people began to recognize the nature of racism and that it is structural and systemic and institutional rather than personal and individual. And I think that the confluence of the pandemic, which allowed us to see very clearly the nature of structural racism, because so many more Black people, so many more Indigenous people, Latinx people have been hurt by the pandemic and are dying. That consciousness sort of clicked, and people felt the need to collectively join all of those who believe that changes need to happen in this country. And I mean, it's so remarkable that millions of people poured out into the streets, as you point out, not only all over the country and in places where we never imagined that there would be such protests, but all over the world, in Asia, in the Middle East, in South America, in Europe, of course. And this is something that is very special. And by itself, such a response does not necessarily bring about change, but it creates the terrain for the production of radical change. And I think it's important that people recognize that now, even though it's a quieter moment, we don't have the millions of people out in the streets, there is an enormous amount of work being done. And this is precisely the time to begin the work to pass new legislation, to reorganize various kinds of organizations, to look and identify the role that structural racism has played in these formations, educational organizations, cultural organizations, healthcare, the whole range of social organizations in this country.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things that you kind of have been hitting on throughout is organizing. Like I continue to hear you talk about, it's the continuous organizing, and that is what is going to get us free. I feel like that I've heard you before talk about it's organizing, and then there's a moment or the time is right, and these things happen and occur. Can you break down a little bit more about the distinction between organizing and mobilization? I think that some of our young people who are finding the movement and finding their voice, are really battling with what that means and what that looks like. And so, can you talk a little bit about the difference between mobilization and the organizing piece?
Well, sometimes we tend to get addicted to the intensity of moments when masses of people are in the streets, when we're all hearing about the issue of fighting racism, not only in social media, but in the established media. And of course, we experienced that last summer, and it was remarkable. However, that was a demonstration of work that had already been done. I like to think about demonstrations as demonstrating the existence of movements and making visible the work that is usually largely invisible. The development of consciousness, the creation of new organizations, the work on a local level. Often one doesn't see immediate results to that work. And as people who live in this capitalist society, we're accustomed to wanting the immediacy of outcomes and consequences. I know foundations always ask, well, what is the 1-year outcome? Or, what is a 2-year outcome? 5 years seems a long time. But actually, it often takes even longer for that work to settle in and to begin to constitute a different kind of consciousness for masses of people. At least more than half of the people in this country, if one looks at the vote that went down. And so we have to be very careful about developing strategy that will allow those people who have been misled to eventually join us. And this is why I think Louisville is so important, because Louisville has despite all of the issues, and you know better than I, and the horrendous police murder of Breonna Taylor, but Louisville also has, thanks to the work of people like Ann and Carl Brayton, a tradition of white people doing work, radical anti-racist work. Carla Wallace, for example, the Fairness Campaign, which created alliances between Black communities and the church communities and the LGBTQ community. Nothing like that was happening in the country. So I think of Louisville as expressing a lot of the contradictions that we have to begin to work through if we're going to move forward.
Thank you for that. And I will lift up after the verdict came down of that there wouldn't be charges against the police officers. That evening, we were trying to decide what we're going to do with all the people, and it was our white allies who opened up their church at First Unitarian Church, and we marched and took the protesters there to an actual safe place. And so thank you for laying that context, because we still have those allies, and they are still doing work with us here. One of the things that we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement in the very beginning became this Blue Lives Matter movement. And one of the things that I talk about was that Black Lives Matter, you're talking about a group of people, and Blue Lives Matter, you're talking about an occupation, basically. And so I know that here in Louisville, we are really fighting and battling policing in a different way, out front in a different way than we have previously. The work has been happening, but not so much out in front. And so my question for you is, what is it? What do you think it is to? What does it mean to be a Black police officer today? in this moment in time?
Yeah, on a number of occasions, Black police officers have played really critical roles. But we're talking about an institution that should no longer exist. And I think that the best role that Black police officers, existing Black police officers, can play is in helping us to reimagine a different notion of security and safety. And certainly when you say abolish the police, so many police officers think about this as a personal issue and think about the fact that what we're saying is that you don't deserve to have those jobs anymore. But we're talking about a very different world. We're talking about moving into the future where the individuals who are police officers, whether they're white or whether they're people of color, should be able to imagine playing new roles and being more productive in those new roles. But of course, we work within contradictions. We work with contradictions and within contradictions. And I don't think that we should allow those contradictions to deter us from moving forward.
With those things in mind, and we know that there's qualified immunity that police officers have, and we've seen different different other pieces of legislation, and so how do we hold police accountable, knowing that we want to at the end of the day take away these carceral systems? So like, what is how do we do that? How do we battle that contradiction?
I mean, that's a really important question. And I would once again suggest that perhaps we have to better learn how to work within contradictions. And in this particular case, can we both call for an end to qualified immunity and point out that we need new ways of making people accountable, that we don't want to use the same systems that are responsible for police violence, for racist police violence, to discipline the police who engage in that violence. To me, that only perpetuates the violence we are trying to end. But it doesn't mean that we don't hold police accountable. It doesn't tell us how to create the kind of accountability that is going to make our society stronger, that's going to make the relationships among the people in our society more powerful.
I'm gonna shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about ACLU. And so we know that ACLU historically has been, we're a group that historically has specifically worked on things regarding the Constitution and protecting constitutional rights. And now we've seen ACLU starting to shift a little bit in its role in the work from the Constitution to really digging deep into racial justice and fighting racial injustice. And so the question I want to ask you is, what role do you believe that ACLU should be playing in this current movement? And do you believe that organizations such as ACLU is hurtful or helpful to the current movement?
Well, I have a long relationship with the ACLU, and it's been a critical relationship. I've been very critical of some strategies, but I also recognize that the ACLU has played an absolutely essential role in bringing us to the point where we are today. Many, many years ago, when most legal organizations did not really take prisoner issues seriously, the ACLU had a national prison project. And when I was working with the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, we did an enormous amount of work with the ACLU, and that was really pioneering work that the ACLU as a legal formation was doing. It helped to lead to things like the Abolitionist Law Project today. So I think that the ACLU has played an absolutely essential role. And also I should say that the ACLU did work around my case. So I'm personally thankful for the support of the ACLU and the work that that the organization has done around so many other political prisoners. So yes, we need legal support. We need legal defense. We need, especially at a time when enormous numbers of people are being drawn into the movement, and when there are mobilizations and protests and arrests. We definitely need an organization like the ACLU to defend our right to engage in radical opposition, radical protests. And so I'm really thankful to the ACLU, and the Kentucky ACLU has a very long history, and thank you for your work, especially around the Breonna Taylor case, but around so many other issues as well.
Thank you.
We absolutely need the ACLU.
We need the ACLU, y'all. That's what I was hoping. I know that, a lot of times, sometimes in my role, I battle with being someone who's very close to the ground and doing strategy and organizing in community. And sometimes we hear community folks wanting us to do more, or telling us that we're not doing enough, or saying you all need to be doing this, or you all need to stay out of our business and let the grassroots folks do this piece. And so I just thank you for those words. But I do think as we are moving.
Well, listen, you wouldn't be those responses if you weren't doing work. So that's par for the course, I think. There's always going to be criticisms, and that's okay. And it's all right to be critical and at the same time do the work. This is one of the things I've learned from feminist strategies, from Audre Lorde, for example. We don't have to let these critiques serve as barriers. We can work within contradictions. We can be afraid and still do the work. We don't have to be instinctively courageous to get out here and do this. I like the idea of doing work despite the contradiction, despite the critique, or perhaps precisely because of the contradiction, because of the critique.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that brings another question to mind, and I've heard you talk about before the conflict that's often happens within movements, and that conflict is needed. And can you just talk more about when there is conflict within the movement? And I've heard people say we need conflict just because I said it doesn't mean that is the way, the lay of the land. And so how do we take situations where there is a conflict or disagreement and use that as a tool to continue to build and grow?
Well, I think conflict and disagreement enable us to sharpen our analysis. We should not be afraid of conflict. I welcome conflict because conflict is a driving force. And as someone who has been teaching for many, many decades, I always let my students know that I don't want them to take what I say as the truth simply because I'm saying it. I want them to examine not only everything else, but I want them to examine the examine my ideas and the ways in which I'm encouraging them to be critical. And I think that we have the tendency to assume that everybody has to be in agreement in order to move forward. But when everybody is in agreement, there's a kind of quiet that can lead us to lay back and not do anything at all. We need the conflict because it generates movement, it generates force, it allows us to come up with new ideas. And don't be afraid of the conflict. Yeah, we have to learn how to embrace it.
Thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure and a huge honor to have been able to spend this time with you today. So thank you for all of the work that you've done and you continue to do.
Thank you, Ms. Davis and Keturah, for that thoughtful conversation. It was such a privilege for us to be able to hear that. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce our next performer. She's a poet and a spoken word artist. She was born in Detroit, Michigan. She was raised in Louisville, and she's the founder of Honey Tree Publishing. She visits schools and community centers to share her books and artistry throughout the year. Please join me in welcoming Tytianna Wells.
We met at the bridge, and that's where the story began. Two different paths, but we met in the middle. All it only took, mutability, a nakedness, glass ceiling shattered, vulnerability. Privilege scattering, now we speak the same language, humility. It's been since infancy, and all you needed were your mama's arms. All of us do. If I got the story right this time. It's been a while, but what I do know, somewhere along the way you were taught to feel pain and to hate. But did you know, therapy manifests within the depths of your silence and accountability? You were born to live in your divinity. Yet somewhere along the way you were taught not to feel and to love all things not real, taught to do things that went against your integrity and the personhood that designed you to love religiously, not love religion, which actually means to bind, restrain. I am here with you to understand, and you with I on this bridge, spirituality and literally above this rolling river to make amends, reminding you there are two sides to a story. There are two sides to a coin. So turn the page and make the change and show me who you are without the labels, the categories, the preconceived notions, stereotypes, prejudice. The identities that you wear invisible when no one watches, the decisions that are made when no one hears, the thoughts that you think who you are evolving to become, because I know love lives in you. I know life lives in you. Life is about choices. Unapologetically live your truth. Remember you, but please, I ask you, don't forget about your way. Always searching for a place to call your own that has lived inside you all along. And please, don't forget about me. May the souls of Black folk living and rested be lifted and liberated through love and light always. We speak power and strength and courage upon your name, for it has been written and it is the final say. We stand in solidarity, unity, and peace. White supremacy has only brought chaos, war, disunity, oppression, and poverty inexcusably. My heart's in pain and my soul can't sleep. I got these visions that I can't shake. Do I want revenge or peace? We need love in this world, remedy and release affirmations, validation, not anxiety and grief. The last seconds, the last breath, the last thoughts, emotions, and the memories. The core center of me, the meditation prayer, the God in me, cry out on my knees, mama, wrap me up, hold me, please. Now a candlelight vigil, an airbrush t-shirt, an obituary ceremonial rebirth. I'm steady crying for this world. I got hope and I'm trying. I'm steady surviving in this world, but I still ain't thriving. They say there's two types of Black people in this world, the peaceful and riot. We one of the same, we just trying to stop from dying. Am I next Ahmaud Arbery? Am I next George Floyd? Am I next Breonna Taylor? Am I next David McAtee? trying to put death on my name, but God designed a masterpiece. Still the question remains, how many killings, how many deaths, how many murders will it take before you choose who's next? Life and time now, that's a divine connection. Still you seek to bereave. Just because I was protesting, just because I was progressing, just because I advocate for the community, you choose to take my immunity. Everything that I own, you try to cop from me. Everything that has life, but I'm breaking free. We need laws in place that protect the people, see? We need black control, independence, agency. I'm honest. We need respect, understanding, transparency. I'm going to tell you who we are and who we ain't going to be. This is crazy. How many times we repeat history? A cycle of dysfunction manifesting generationally. I can't breathe. I am a woman. I am a man. Black Lives Matter. That's the new age eulogy. You shot me at least 8 times while I slept on the couch. You broke entered into my house searching for someone already locked down. Innocent bystander. How many more black bodies will we count? I'm still trying to figure why you pulled that trigger. Is it because I'm a black person you named a nigga? I'ma call it what it is. Police patrol is white control. The first slave catchers were on the slave master's parole. They come into our neighborhoods collecting souls. Black bodies are expendable to you is what I know. And you here with each bullet fire, you play a role. They don't want me in this America. I ain't lived yet. Protect the people. My question is, who you gonna kill next? Blood crime scene, gun vest, police call it protection. Toting a murder weapon, killing every black face. They trying to teach a lesson. Hate crimes are jealousy, but I got blessings. My heart tells me to heal, but my mind is still vetting me. You still on the streets living life on this case. There ain't no plea. Ain't no bargain for a life. No justice, no peace. I march in the streets and fight to the death of me. I protect what's mine and my right to breathe. Put my life on the line for my family, and I do it with integrity and loyalty to this oppression cease. Since on the soil, we've been everything but human beings. I'm taking back everything that belongs to me. This is chess, not checkers. It's all in the strategy. We demand justice and change for the community placed in the right people's hands. We have a case that we are seeking legitimizing black lives in this land. My heart is king. My mind is Malcolm. My soul spreads peace while my spirit sings an anthem. I can't rest. There's too much unrest, and a knee against my neck is the plea to blue blood, but I digress. I'm praying for our lives. I'm claiming victory. I'm trying to do things right, but you got a bullet on my life. I got hope and healing. I got faith. I'm willing to talk it through. But you got me chanting hands up, don't shoot. They say I'm too conscious for savages. Your appetite don't lie to you. Listen to your gut. I'm hungry for the living truth. You took that heartbeat away from me. You left this body on the streets. You have no regard for human life, black lives, including me. Am I next? Will some hatred get the best of you in moments of distress? I won't sleep until these animals are off the street. We gotta have our own, be a voice in this fever heat. The memorial hits differently when it's for your peeps. All I keep thinking is, that could have been me. I put my life on the line. I'm armed up with my arms up. You can't take what's mine. Say her name. Say his name. Movement requires action, tactics for retribution. We need a healing not held in this world of black persecution. Turn anger into action. Turn pain into protest. Turn rage into revolution. I say this in the Creator's name. Stay blessed. Amen.
The value of change is priceless. We all go through changes. Electrical waterfall, majestic like magenta fluorescent colors, make you breathe new breath. There are a great deal of nuances to this life we name time that we can't get back, we can't take back, we can't return, but we keep living and we keep breathing. A beautiful soul once told me movement is purpose. I trust this voyage will be memorable. With redemption as the foreground, I will love you immensely. Despite the trauma and the drama and all the intricacies wrapped and tattered, gathered and shattered, surely we will find a meeting space to convene in this hell we call heaven. Built on man-made philosophy and pedagogy for language to give the final word and call to injustice the first words that brought life into this world. But now there are choices and will, leaving the tongue untamed to destroy its descendants. No one is safe from its horns, but something was taken from me. Something was built on the existence of my non-existence, the fetishized other, exotic one to tame. You name me beast, but you have done the killing, the heaviness and weight of it all. I see you beautifully. With all your flaws and imperfections, with all the pause and reservations, I see you. Transforming, transformation, solidifying the siege war-torn battlefield hospital. There was an outcry among the people, whether they utter the sound or not, for a healing, some kind of remedy, some plant to naturally cure and protect and oxygenize and repopulate and return back to the earth for the next cycle around to make it right. Sometime in our soul connection, in the divinity of our birthright, in the solitude of our prayers, tells me we will find a bridge, a meeting place to talk these things over, to settle the case, where critical is not so critical and life is just a life. I do hope you hear these words, form some kind of appreciation, a soft soothe. I do hope one day you will see me for me, with all my imperfections, my flaws, my scars, my wounds, because this sore has got to heal. Broken pieces can be fixed, so no, I am not broken, just a work in progress, an unfinished and poignant, not yet polished, but still working art piece like the others. But I am art nonetheless, and I do hope that one day you see the masterpiece in me. One day you will see we only have one chance to live on this earth. Time is infinite, and although life is priceless, it is worth so much.
Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the program. If you're not already, I'd like to invite you now to become a card-carrying member of the ACLU of Kentucky for as little as $5. With you at our side, we can continue our work to protect the constitutional rights of all Kentuckians. Your membership dues directly support the work that we do in Frankfort and communities across the Commonwealth. Joining is easy. Visit our website, ACLU-KY.org/join to become a member. While you're online, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You'll find us at ACLU of KY on all of those platforms. Up next, our Executive Director, Michael Aldridge, introduces our new Board of Directors and has information on our work over the past year. Thanks again for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of the program.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the ACLU of Kentucky's Executive Director, Michael Aldridge. Thank you for attending our 2021 annual meeting. I wish you could be in the office with us, sharing stories of the last several months, but we are still working healthy at home. There is light at the end of the tunnel, though, with the arrival of the COVID-19 vaccine, and hopefully by next year we will be able to get together again. You know, the ACLU of Kentucky continues to defend reproductive freedom in the courts and the legislature, litigating cases that would severely limit access to reproductive health care while working to stop additional restrictive legislation from passing. We've also worked to introduce the Maternal Care Act, which would address issues of maternal mortality and help Kentuckians have healthy births and healthy babies, as well as paid family leave legislation for state employees. Our work on criminal justice reform has increased this year, with advocates working in Frankfort to ban the use of no-knock warrants statewide, keep kids out of adult court, create meaningful police reform, and abolish the death penalty in our Commonwealth. Our smart justice advocates continue to meet monthly and bring impacted individuals to the table to discuss legislation and voice their support or opposition to lawmakers. And for the first time this year, smart justice advocates have also participated in many lobby days around key legislation, creating a dialogue between impacted people and their representatives. In a year of firsts, the ACLU of Kentucky also participated in a massive Get Out the Vote campaign with great success. We created a campaign to engage the 175,000 Kentuckians whose voting rights were restored with Governor Beshear's executive order, as well as communities of color and other communities often overlooked in voter outreach efforts. We sent over 100,000 text messages, had 20,000 visits to our online voter information center, and reached over 2.2 million people through social media messages. We are so excited for the coming year. And as vaccinations become more widespread and we can get back to our offices, ultimately back to our communities across the state. We have plans to set up working groups of directly impacted people across Kentucky for each of our priority areas as we deepen our commitment to community organizing. To accommodate the new and expanded work we've been doing, our staff has grown over the last few years. This past year alone, we promoted Amber Duke to Deputy Director and hired Angela Cooper as our new Communications Director. We also brought on Savannah Taylor to fill the newly created executive administrator position and added organizing coordinator Marcus Jackson and campaign coordinator Heather Ayer to accomplish the electoral work I mentioned. Our annual meeting is an opportunity for our members across the state to vote on our board of directors. The votes are in, and we will be able to introduce the new board members shortly. But first, I would like to recognize the members of our board who are departing after years of dedicated service. Aaron Kennedy Startzman, our current board president, will rotate off the board. Aaron first came to the ACLU of Kentucky as a social work intern, then volunteered with us during law school and joined the board shortly after. She has most recently served as vice president and then president. I have for Erin this special sculpture as a token of our appreciation for her wisdom and service. Thank you, Erin, for your passion for the ACLU of Kentucky and our mission. Each of our departing board members will receive a similar sculpture. Also leaving the board this year are Randy Strobo, Stafford Easterling, Steve Barger, Enid Trucios Haynes, Brandon Edwards, Lee Look, and Jenny Heitkemper. We remain grateful for their service and support and know that their commitment to the ACLU of Kentucky will live on. We would like to extend a warm welcome to our incoming board president, Soha Syed. Soha is an attorney with Reese, Syed, Perry Johnson Law Office, where she represents workers who have experienced discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Formerly, Soha was a staff attorney with the Legal Aid Society. She served rural, low-income Kentuckians in such areas as landlord-tenant, foreclosure, consumer, and family law. Our new incoming board members are Shelley Driestat, Stephanie Johnson, Savi Shabazz, Tytianna Wells, Cody Angel, Sophia Kaheya, Terrence Sullivan, Mary Hargis, Miriam Kaloun, and Shadonna Banks, who joined the board a few months ago to fill an unexpired term. Welcome to all of you, and we will look forward to continuing our work with your help. It's a pleasure to work with so many talented people who volunteer their time and donate their skills to make the ACLU of Kentucky the strongest organization that it can be. While we will miss our departing board members, we will look forward to forging relationships with our new directors as we continue to evolve and grow. We would also like to recognize our new slate of officers for the 21-22 fiscal year. Being a member of the executive committee is an additional commitment of time and energy, and we appreciate everyone who has stepped up for that responsibility. It is now my pleasure to introduce two Kentucky musicians who graciously agreed to share their talents with us tonight. Scott T. Smith is a folk soul singer from Hurricane, West Virginia, who currently lives and performs here in Louisville. He is joined by Ben Sollee, Lexington native and cellist, singer-songwriter, and composer. Special thanks to the KMAC Museum for use of their space for this performance. Welcome, Scott and Ben.
The song I'm about to sing with my dear friend Ben Sollee is a song that weighs heavy on my heart. It is one that comes with a message that is not easy to talk about at tables or in private rooms with even our loved ones. Who's Gonna Call My Mama is a song that I wrote after a deep and disturbing conversation with a dear friend of mine, John Cherry. We were sitting on his porch after the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. And at that point in time, and in many points in time in history, I think two young black men felt like they were possibly next, or as though their lives were in danger just by being who they were, being in their skin. This song is one that I hope gives you perspective into my life and into the lives of so many around you that you may love in a way that you never thought that they were feeling. This is going to be hard to sing, but it's for you and it's for me. It's Who's Gonna Call My Mama? I'm tired. I'm so tired. I feel like I'm on the run. Who's gonna pack my house up? Who's gonna pack my house up? Who's gonna pack my house up if they cut me down? Who's gonna pack my house up? Who's gonna pack my house up? Who's gonna pack my house up if they cut me down? I'm so tired. Whoa. I said I'm tired. I'm so tired. I feel like I'm on the run. I believe in a better way. I believe in a better day. I believe. Oh, I said I believe. Oh, 'cause I'm tired. I'm so tired. I feel like I'm on the run. Who's gonna call my mama? Who's gonna call my mama? Who's gonna call my mama if they cut me down? I said when they cut me down.
This is a tune of mine called How to See the Sunrise. Very much inspired by the R&B music that I grew up listening to in my home.
You know, Ben, I grew up listening to R&B in my house too.
You know, I could tell.
Why so?
Well, a little R&B and a little country music,
There you go.
which is really, that's Kentucky.
West Virginia too.
Well, teach me, baby. Ooh, Lord, yes, a little show and tell. How to keep from loving you.
Teach me, baby. Teach me, baby.
What should I? Fits in my heart, baby. Lord, keep it in the shade. Give it all the fruit it could want, except yours. Ooh, teach me, baby. Oh, I promise one more time, just exactly how far you are away. Should I start walking now, baby? Oh Lord, I'll wait another day. Yeah. You know I don't need, Lord, I don't need no man. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes, I find, yes, I find, yes, I find my way. Yeah. Yes promise I get it this time.
Teach me, baby,
How to hold a bird in my hand and watch it grow. Watch it grow.
teach me, baby.
See those feathers bloom, but don't let it fly. Don't let it fly. Even though, oh, that's what it's supposed to do. Teach me, baby. Oh, just one last time. Just one last time.
Teach me, baby.
Just one last time.
Teach me, baby.
How to see the sunrise
Teach me, baby.
in the dead of night.
Teach me, baby.
'Cause that's how it feels, baby.
That's how it feels, baby.
Yes, that's how it feels, baby.
That's how it feels, baby.
Yes, that's how it feels, baby.
I said, that's how it feels, baby.
But you don't feel that way, do you, baby?
Oh, do you, do you, do you, do you, do you, do you?
You don't feel that way, do you, baby? I said you don't feel that way, do you, baby? You don't feel that way, do you,
This next song is named Resting Place. It's for those who are still trying to figure out a way to celebrate their loved ones that they lost during COVID, whether to this disease or whether just still trying to figure out a way to celebrate their lives amongst a time where we can't truly gather. I hope this brings you some peace. Every now and then I hear you whisper on the breeze, and thoughts of you rattle through those old oak trees. The headaches of life are what you took away, but the pain and the pressure still looking for peace in your resting place. Looking for peace in your resting place. And I hope I find it someday, some way. You and I staked out this little piece of heaven. And now I see your face in these old smoky mountains. And if these conversations seem a little one-sided. I guess our worlds are still divided. Looking for peace in your resting place. Looking for peace in your resting place. And I hope I find it someday, some way. If I wish to talk to heaven from this rolling mountainside, I tell you that I found some peace here today, and now I can say goodbye. Looking for peace in your resting place. Looking for peace in your resting place. And I hope I find it someday, some way. Looking for peace in your resting place. Looking for peace in your resting place. And I hope I find it someday.
Thank you, Ben and Scott, for that incredible set, and special thanks to the K-Mac Museum for allowing us to film that segment in their gallery featuring the artwork of Ramona Lindsay. I'd also like to thank our other special guests, Tytianna Wells and Angela Davis, for sharing their time with us. Don't forget, you can become a card-carrying member of the ACLU of Kentucky for as little as $5. Visit our website, aclu-ky.org/join to become a member. You can also follow us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at ACLU-KY. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great evening.